This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Mother's Day is almost here, and you can get her the most beautiful time-tested gift around. A watch she can wear every day from Movement. Whether mom's into classic dress watches, rare and refined ceramics, or tried and true bestsellers, Movement has something she'll love. And right now you can save big on the best Mother's Day gift ever with up to 50% off site-wide during Movement's Mother's Day sale at mvmt.com. Again, that's up to 50% off at mvmt.com.
We made this.
This is our special Fight the Future Minute podcast. I'm Kurt North, and you are listening to our coverage of minute 42 of the X-Files film Fight the Future. This minute begins at 41 minutes as Kurtzweil begins to delve deeper into a conspiracy that happened several years ago in the southwestern United States involving the hantavirus. It ends at 41:59, with Kurtzweil revealing that he won't write about what killed the men in Dallas. To discuss this minute, I'm joined once again by X-Cast patron Katie Doe. Again, we are now in our third minute together, Katie, and we're getting into the real serious work of FEMA and conspiracy now, aren't we?
We are. We're getting to the good part.
We're getting to the good part, yeah. But so first of all, I think we need to talk a little bit about the hantavirus. So what have you got for me? You've been doing a little bit of research, haven't you?
Just a bit. I just looked back into the event that he mentions in the movie. In the Southwest several years ago, and it was a true event. Happened in 1993 in the Four Corners area, they called it. It was Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. And they just described, I just did a little bit of research on describing how they first came to find it. It was a Navajo man who was very young and fit. He went to the hospital with a shortness of breath, and he died extremely rapidly after that. And they didn't really, clock it as anything that would be a plague, that sort of thing. But they did find out his fiance had died a couple days earlier of the same symptoms. And that's the reason the illness was discovered to be, a connection. So they went out and tried to find additional people who had died of the same illness, but had not been linked to a particular disease yet. So it only took them a few weeks with experts working across these four areas. They found additional cases, and they were able to link the pulmonary syndrome with a previously unknown type of hantavirus.
Right. Okay. So it's a different strand that they found.
It was a different strain. Yeah.
Right. Oh, right. Okay. I didn't know that. I mean, it was also, I did a little bit of research, but mine was more a bit on the science.
Yep.
From what I learned is that it's spread by deer mice, and that the transmission of it was it's a bit like when we get things like through rats and things like that through the urine, and that's kind of how it's contracted. But the transmission isn't human to human. Now, I don't know if that was the case with this different strain or not, but they're saying that you have to directly be in connection with the urine of these deer mice. And they say that the symptoms can, like you've said, it's a kind of pulmonary thing, and it could move up to like 5 weeks for the general strain of it. And in the first couple of weeks, you tend to get flu-like symptoms and develop like cough and shortness of breath over the next couple of weeks. And then by the time you get to like the fourth and fifth week, it can develop into a life-threatening pneumonia. So it sounds like a really nasty little disease, really, doesn't it?
It sounds awful, yeah. And it sounds like this one was more quickly moving.
Right. Yeah. So it was. Yeah. It may well have been human to human, because we know that in the past when people have talked about avian flu, that's one of the main things that they're really concerned about is it's not just a transmission from birds; it's a transmission between human and human, wasn't it? That we've had that scare a few years back, and it is really scary to think about that. These things can easily take a hold and do severe damage.
It is. Yeah. It's scary.
So in the X-Files world, though, they use this quite interestingly, don't they? I mean, what in the past they've used events like this before, the Challenger in space, for example, or we've got, I would say something like Tunguska with the 1908 event and things. But this is like, again, using a real life event to actually bring the story of the X-Files to life. Did you think that this was a really effective way of doing that?
I think so, because it's fairly believable that the government would get involved if it was a large outbreak. Although, as we see later, the cover stories, it's a very small outbreak, and that leads to Kurtzweil questioning it. But it's not beyond the realm of believability, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, what I particularly like about this part of the film is that up until this point in the series, we know there's the Syndicate, and we know there's the Well Manicured Man and Cigarette Smoking Man, and even likes of the First Elder and Second Elders that have come in, and likes of Patient X and Red and the Black. That we do start to feel that this is a step forward in what the conspiracy is, and it becomes more focused after this point. I mean, Patient X and Red and the Black really does that in a lot of ways, but using the FEMA aspect, so when FEMA were called out to the hantavirus, he says stuff like, that FEMA allows the White House to suspend constitutional government in declaration of national emergency. Those are really kind of interesting things that they've taken from that management agency. And the fact that a broad sweeping power that he mentions, and as you say, the small outbreak and things, that it's a really interesting and really thought provoking thing that they can suspend government and almost create martial law in some degrees to really kind of bring this conspiracy out. And as the date is set, as we find out a bit later on.
It is, yeah. And if you want to go down a rabbit hole, just look up FEMA conspiracy theories on the internet, and it will be hours that you're looking through all this stuff. I looked a little bit, and this conspiracy theory has been floating for several decades that FEMA is going to come in and concoct, as one site said, concoct a pretense for declaring martial law and confine patriotic dissidents to camps.
Right. Okay. No, I didn't know that. I'm going. That's it. Now you're going to send me down that rabbit hole tomorrow.
Well, that interesting. It said it went back to went back decades, and it's very prevalent during the militia movement of the 90s. So we're in that time period again, that decade. Yes. So it's kind of top of mind, and Chris Carter's kind of taking from the news a little bit.
Right. Okay. No, I didn't know that. That's something that's really interesting. The another thing that I really liked about this scene is that I kind of mentioned it in the last episode that another police car pulls up at the front of the building, which breaks up the conversation, and I really like that, because I think that if you didn't have that break, it would just be words after words after words after words. And I think that, I'm not saying it wasn't a hantavirus, and Mulder saying, well, what was it? We just have that break of, we're going to move. And I think this is where, I mentioned it in the last episode, but this is really where Mark Snow's score really starts to pump up, doesn't it? It really kind of gives you that real forceful kind of, all right, okay, we're getting deeper. And what I particularly like about the police car thing is that we're getting deeper into the story, but they're also getting deeper into the alleyway. So it's really a nice kind of push and pull with that.
They are, yeah. He's really not hiding that far from his apartment, though. That was my one thought. From he's a few alleyways down. They could easily find him if they wanted to.
Yeah, just look around the corner and go, oh, there he is. Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, the mood setting in the alleyway is fantastic, like the X-Files does. Light, shadow, darkness, smoke. It's great. Yeah.
And this is where it's always funny when you kind of there's so much in the films and the TV show, but Kurtzweil starts talking about when there were young men in the military. He talks about his dad, and this is something that will come on into the special edition version of the X-Files, where he starts talking about his dad and Samantha and things, which we're not covering in this theatrical version. But speaking about his dad, he says we were friends in the military. We were friends in the military. That they told us it was biological warfare, which is especially coming off the back of season 11 with Kitten, that kind of works quite well. And he mentions the virus, which again goes back to what we've seen in Tunguska, Terma, Patient X, and the Red and the Black. And then he says, which is a really telling line, what killed them I won't even write about, and we finish mid-sentence at that point. So we're getting really into the history of the X-Files here, aren't we? Getting really deep into Mulder's history with it, the fact that his dad's been mentioned, that Kurtzweil's talking about biological warfare, that they were misled. They believed they were doing something, but it wasn't what they thought it was. And then Mulder's like probing question, well, what killed those men, referring to the people in Dallas, really, wasn't it? So what did you think to those lines of bringing the Mulder family into it and the virus and stuff?
Oh, I thought it was good. I thought it really connected with the show. It harkens back to Mulder discovering other, syndicate members who have been with his father that he didn't know. Victor Klemper, the well-mannered man. He goes back and looks at photos, and it's like he's just kind of discovering one thing after another about his father and what his role was in all of this. Yeah,
and that really kind of brings the episode. I keep saying the episode to a close because it doesn't. I don't know why I keep doing that. That brings the minute to the close. So obviously, what killed him, I won't even write about. Which again, it goes back to what we were saying in the last episode, that the almost like the ego of Kurtzweil in some ways is like, I won't even write about that. It's kind of, it gives us that mysticism and that mystery of how dark does this go? But at the same time, it's Kurtzweil was obviously writing a lot about the apocalypse and stuff, but he won't write about what is actually going to occur, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next minute. And did you pick that up as well?
I did, yeah. So with his books, obviously, even what he imagines can't be that bad is what is happening or going to happen now. So yeah, it definitely leads to a darker theme.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, so that wraps up our latest Fight the Future minute, unless you have anything else with regards to this small section of the minute.
I do. I have a quick anecdote about me seeing the film for the first time, which relates to this minute. So I don't remember if it was on opening day, but it was very close to it. My sister and I went to the theater, and as soon as this scene starts, when he really gets into the talking about FEMA and everything, the sound cut out in the movie theater.
Oh, no.
So the film was playing. The film was playing, but you couldn't hear the sound, and it went through the entirety of the rest of this scene with all the exposition and info and everything. And it was interesting. People started talking, people were grumbling, yelling at the screen.
I can imagine, out of all the times that you could have had the film go off,
exactly,
the sound go off, is not a time when Martin Landau is doing exposition
exactly
about FEMA.
This older couple got up and stormed up the aisleway. The guy was yelling, well, there's no point in staying now, you can't hear what Martin Landau said.
Oh God.
So it came back on kind of quickly after this scene ends, but you could kind of guess it was something conspiracy related, having seen the show before. You didn't really need that, but
it's that deep throat kind of meeting in a understory car park and that kind of aspect, can't you? So it's like, well, they're obviously talking about something.
Exactly.
We've seen it with X, we've seen it with Deep Throat, we've seen it with Marita and all that kind of thing.
Yep.
So when did it actually come back on then? You're saying at the end of this scene, was it like the end of the next minute, or was it mid sentence during them talking?
Like the end of the next minute, like after the scene had changed to another location.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But so they gave us free passes and we went back to see it again in its entirety. So
right. Well, I suppose you got that, but that being the first time as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not good, is it? That would be my worst nightmare. I work in a cinema, and my worst nightmare is when sound doesn't come on and things, and especially if it's like power cuts or whatever in particular episodes. It's a lot easier now. Just talking about this in some slightly more technical terms, that in 1998 it would have been all 35mm or 70mm celluloid film,
the reels,
and the proper reels and things. So to rewind a reel of film takes a hell of a lot of work, and I've done it before where the films are broken down and I've had to rewind like 45 minutes worth of film. And it's ridiculously long. It takes forever, and having going at 24, 25 frames a second or whatever it is, that you missed out that whole 2 minutes, and you're talking quite a lot of frames. But then to reset it would be almost impossible. Whereas nowadays, if we've had a power cut, not last Christmas before, we had quite a few, and there would be at certain points in the films. But now it's very much like an iPad; you can just rewind it 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's like, what we often do when that's happened is that you go up to the audience and go, do we need to go any further back? Do we need to go any further back? And then you just press play and you're good to go. But
we could have used that. That would be simple, yeah.
That would have been simple, but unfortunately we didn't have that technology in 1998. So
well, it makes for a good story anyway.
It does, yeah. And thank you for. I'm glad that you had this minute to talk about it as well. It's good that.
That's kind of why I went for it, though.
Fantastic. Okay, so thanks, Katie. So you'll be back for minute 43. So minute 43, we're going to delve even further. There's no context what killed those men. That's what we're going to be talking about. There's no context. So we haven't got any context to go with. So until our next minute, remember, as always, everyone, trust no one.
Previously on the We Made This Network. The Movie Palace.
All I know of the Oscars, what I've seen on television, what I've read. What sort of work goes into putting on the kind of show that most of us are familiar with, from the TV?
The preparation starts weeks and weeks before. There's such a huge buildup with the Oscar nominations. Here in Los Angeles, they're announced at I think it's like 5:35 in the morning, and I remember going to the nomination announcements a few times, and there's always this gigantic breakfast banquet. All the press were there. Really this giant buzz in the room. Everyone's super excited to hear the announcements.
We buy records.
One of our listeners, they were walking past a charity shop where they saw someone had left records. And not just a few records, 6 bags of records.
Oh, shit.
So they eyeballed these records and thought, it's a bank holiday. It's Sunday today.
So let me guess, they thought it would be only right for me to prevent them getting nicked by somebody by me nicking them.
Correct.
Pull or pass?
I've met Neil a few times at conventions, and he actually did a talk when I worked in a library. I actually got him to do a talk in my library. And he's a very kind, thoughtful, gentle, fun man with a very twisted brain. He is such a nice bloke, and then you read the stuff that he writes, and you're like, what's going on? This man's lovely, but he writes the most vicious stuff.
Yeah, that is very true. Begs some real questions about what's really going on inside Neil's head.
And that's said with love, Neil, if you are listening in.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.